This week on Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, we turn the table.
Have you ever wondered about Molly Buccola, the founder, facilitator, and host behind our Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke? Guests and listeners often ask about her journey. What led her to this work? How her own experiences shape the stories we share? And why is this mission so personal to her? In this special episode, we're sharing an interview from Recovery After Stroke, where host Bill Gasiamis speaks with Molly about her path, offering a deeper look into her life. She opens up about loss, rediscovery, and the power of storytelling, giving you a glimpse behind the mic into the heart and purpose that drive this organization. Thank you for joining us for part 2. Molly Buccola interviewed by Bill Gasiamis.
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke. Stroke offers a powerful, life-changing shift in perspective. Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. Beyond Stillness offers a moment of pause for storytelling and reflection. Ultimately, we create a welcoming environment that reveres the moment beyond stroke's paralysis. Still moments unite humanity and divinity. As we begin today, we take a moment of pause, a moment to honor the wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope that emerges through recovery. And we give thanks. Now, part 2 of my interview on Recovery After Stroke with Bill Gasiamis.
What we've been talking about for everyone who's listening and watching, I've introduced at the beginning of the episode Molly and her work, so we've got a fair idea of who Molly is before we start the interview. But we're talking about the podcast, which is Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke, and Molly's version of podcasting is very different. We get taken on 1 hour sessions, each one of them, and there are about 7 or 8 of them where you interview us and then you kind of extract from the people who you've interviewed information about their life, who they were. My specific story, I'll talk about that one, was we spoke about my upbringing and my habits as a little kid and how those habits became my habits later on in life, and perhaps the habits of a little kid didn't serve the habits of an adult. And then during those conversations, you gave me homework to do. That was interesting, like actually doing the homework and reflecting on part of the story that we were hoping to craft. But for me, I wasn't crafting a story. I was just trying to answer your questions and do what you're doing now, deeply think about something, a situation. And then we go through that for about 8 weeks, backwards and forwards, some emails, and then you put it all together and you do a wonderful job. And then you deliver an interview with the person you've gone on this journey with, which goes for approximately 30 minutes. And then you get the stroke survivor to read their own story out. And that was a really interesting experience for me because I wrote my book. It was like my own agenda. I wanted to tell people about this strange path to stroke being the best thing that happened to you, even though it has this foundation of a really difficult time, stillness, darkness, all that thing. But then when I was reading my story, the one that you helped me extract, it was a far more profound experience because I was reading that and I was getting emotional because I was reflecting on me. Like you said, I was reflecting on the other person of me,
Hmm.
the other one. It was a very different experience. It was really profound.
Wow. I'm so glad, Bill. Yeah, the process is different for every person. Some people write, and due to aphasia, some people have writing or reading challenges, and so they will talk and I'll type as they talk. And like you said, sometimes when people are talking in our reflective meetings, I'll give homework and say, I want you to write 2 pages on that. I want to hear more about that, Bill. And my hope is that they hear themselves, because when they take a moment to stop and reflect, you were talking about journaling and how you're not a journaler. This is an opportunity for people to talk it out. And I take notes as they're talking and I'll read it back to them. I'll read back their key phrases and they get to decide what they want to tell the world. So they'll come up with their theme or their main takeaway from the story. And Bill, yours was post-traumatic growth. How is my experience an example of post-traumatic growth?
Sorry to interrupt you. It was one of the very first times that I spoke about post traumatic growth in detail and reflected on it in detail. And it's been on my mind, and I never had the word
Hmm.
for what I had experienced and what all of the people who I interviewed for the book experienced. And we had this thing, but we didn't have a label for it. And without a label,
Yeah.
it kind of felt like we couldn't touch it. And
Uh,
then in that time that we spoke, and just before that, I started looking at the research of post traumatic growth. And then I spoke about it with my mentor. And it was the catalyst to the work that I want to do next and take to the next level, which is to speak to corporations. And I'm preparing a presentation on post traumatic growth so that they understand that trauma is, again, that time, and then we can move ahead and forward from it. And then we can grow at the same time, and we can transform traumas and PTSD into post traumatic growth. We can. I'm not saying it's easy, it's a long process and different for everybody, but you can do it. And this is what I got out of our interview, which I didn't expect. That's the thing about it. It's just far more profound than I ever thought could be, especially because I started this interview very naively, this whole podcast series very naively, thinking it was just about me, but then realizing that it's not about me at all. It's about everybody else and us. I wanted to understand from you, why start your podcast series? Why do this work 17 years later?
hmm. First off, I want to commend you on your work with post traumatic growth and finding a name for it, because Bill, you've been doing it all along
Mm,
since day one. All of your work has been, again, all of your work has been working to this point.
mm,
Everything that you have done, who you are, has led you to this moment. And we can all say that about everything. How am I standing at the intersection outside? Well, everything in my life led me to where I'm standing right now. Back to your question. How did I get here? Is that right?
yeah. Yeah. Why did you decide after 17 years to start a
Yeah.
podcast series, connect with the stroke community? Clearly, this thing that you had been through, even though you moved on from it and got on with your life, clearly it hadn't been properly put to work or dealt with or transformed yet.
Hmm. Well, when COVID hit, my partner and I returned home to Oregon. We didn't have children, and we both grew up in Oregon. And so we returned home, and I started volunteering to facilitate a support group with people who had been affected by stroke. And I had volunteered all my life in a variety of different ways and loved it because I love getting to know people and, again, how they came to be where they are or what they're doing. And everyone has a different story. But I was sitting listening to these people, and I felt this deep, I mean, again, this is a little bit about me. I felt this deep connection as they were talking about something that I hadn't thought about in a very long time. It touched me deeply. And on a run one morning, I realized I have all the skills to put all this to work. For 16 years, I worked with faculty and staff and students one on one to craft their story and then deliver it to 400 people in the mic. So we would work on drafting their stories. And once a week at the school that I worked at, one of those people would get up in the microphone and we'd practice public speaking skills. And I thought, why not do that with stroke survivors? That's something I want to do. And the minute I started conducting these reflection sessions with stroke survivors, and it's something that I had done for a long time, I just felt goosebumps. Like I knew it was right. I knew that it was the moment that that I knew I needed to be there. And Bill, you said that hearing yourself talk, you realized that your life had this culmination point and you were on this trajectory. And a lot of times after people finish the sessions, they start volunteering, or some people have started their own support groups. Some have gone back to rehab. Some have shared their stories at the local library. All these people, when they hear themselves talk, when they hear their story put together in one, I mean, every person could have 100 stories. There's only 16 minutes. But when they hear themselves read it, there's always an emotional piece. And it's all things that they've said or written themselves. It's really powerful for people to see themselves, to look back and then see their path forward.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. That's profound. That flip of I'm just moving, I don't know where I'm going, to I know where I'm going is a game changer, completely changes everything. That happened to me as well. The podcast was not called the Recovery After Stroke podcast at the beginning. And then one day, not on a run, because I barely run, but one day, same kind of thing happened. It was like, whoa, you should be talking to stroke survivors. What are you doing talking to people who are not stroke survivors? Well, they're lovely and their stories are important, but I couldn't really resonate with them, and I couldn't really find an audience. It wasn't sticking. And then as soon as I changed it to the Recovery After Stroke podcast and began interviewing either stroke survivors or people who help stroke survivors or caregivers, it completely changed everything. It was it was a goosebumps moment for me too. Like I couldn't believe that that's the thing that I was meant to do. It was so weird.
And then in that moment, I've only been doing this for a year, but the right people show up at the right time and the right ideas pop into my head at the right time, and someone connects with it's unfolding on its own. It's such a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah. It's
has
an
a
experience.
spirit of its own.
Yeah, yeah. It's an experience. That's what I'm finding. The comments that are coming from all around the world and every day via email or on YouTube. And it's like you never, you think you're not going to get continuously blown away by everybody's feedback. And then just every single day, there's a new comment and a new feedback. And I just never thought that there could be so much positivity and hope and opportunity to do that kind of work before. I never thought that. And a massive pattern, because I'm pretty good at observing patterns in the world, whether they are people's behavior or my own, or any kind of pattern. Like sometimes things just pop up into my head and I see a pattern, and then it's so obvious. Volunteering is a key component to these transformations, to these post-traumatic growth events. It's one of the keystones. If you have that, then a lot of the other ones come into place, they fall in.
Yeah.
And every one of the people who I interviewed for my book volunteered, and so did the people who didn't make it in, because I interviewed more than 10 people. And it's just a very common theme that in the thick of it, often with no resources and all the challenges you could possibly imagine, sometimes immediately after stroke, and that means a few months after stroke, people are looking to help other stroke survivors. How can I help other stroke survivors when they are themselves in dire need of help?
Mm. I see that too. We have monthly Zooms with past guests and listeners. And yesterday, over half of the people in that group talked about volunteering. And it wasn't necessarily volunteering in the stroke community, but it was volunteering. And one guy said, I was just folding letters and putting them in a envelope. And he's like, it didn't feel like much, but it felt good to be there. And maybe we're not ready to face our stroke. Maybe we are still at a point that we're like, what just happened? What is this? But there's something powerful about offering our strengths, our talents, our time, and joining with others to do something for the community.
It's very religious, and I don't know a lot about religions per se, other than the Greek Orthodox religion a little bit, but it is a fundamental theme that pops up. It's that doing something for your neighbor, for others, helping out where you can. That whole theme seems to be taught a lot. Now, I also like to think it's instinctive. It's an instinct of us rather than an embedded theme that we grew up with. I think it's how humans find community, the one that we always look out for each other and you help your neighbor, the one where you're not talking about politics or crazy stuff. Like for me, I've got probably a strong political leaning in one way or another, but in all the 320 episodes that I've done so far or thereabouts, I've never spoken about who should be prime minister, president, what this guy thinks, what policy should be about that. We've never ever spoken about any of that stuff. There's no room for it when you're doing stuff like thinking about other people and how to help them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's something truly connective in each of us, and that's what you and I are doing, Bill. We're pulling stories from people. We're asking them to talk about what's important to them. And once we sit down at the table and talk about the real stuff, what's the real stuff, right? Who knows? But you love talking philosophy. We can talk about the real stuff forever.
Yeah.
When I was on a walk and was thinking about the commonalities between each of the talks, I came up with wisdom, because everyone has their own unique wisdom. something for someone might not be the same something for someone else. And everyone has this unique wisdom that they are expressing through their story. Wisdom, purpose. They find purpose somewhere. Going back to our volunteerism, wisdom, purpose, connection. So finding connection within themselves, like their path, all of a sudden they see how everything connects, or connections with others, creating community. Now they feel like they're a part of relationships that are growing deeper now post-stroke. So wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope. With those things, there's a way forward.
Yeah. All familiar themes. That's
Yeah.
things that I noticed. The purpose, there's a chapter in my book, the last chapter is stumbling into purpose.
Yes.
Because nobody sets out to find their purpose when they find it. If you try and do purpose by going, I'm going to think about what my purpose in life is, you'll be thinking about it for an eternity. You're never going to get there because it's not what it's about. Because, yeah, because thinking about purpose is not purposeful. Like, do you know what I mean? It's trying to compose purpose, and you can't compose purpose. You have to feel it. You have to be it. You have to live it. It's not something you think. You don't think it. And that's what all of the people who I interviewed did, is they all stumbled into their purpose. They didn't set out for it, but volunteering, by looking at their own life and making changes where they knew that they perhaps could do a little better: nutrition, sleep, relationships, exercise or effort in that exercise space, because everyone after stroke can exercise differently at different levels or capacities. When they attended to a lot of those things, purpose kind of just spat itself out at the end and going, you found your purpose.
Well, you can do things that are purposeful. You can talk about purpose, but until that moment that you spoke about, Bill, until that moment where you have the chills and you're like, oh, I feel it. I am living purpose. It's for me, it's a bodily experience.
Yep.
For me, it's I'm a very kinesthetic person. So for somebody else, it might be hearing themselves say something and then they realize, I'm living with purpose.
For me, it was episode 70. I'm pretty sure it was episode 70. I looked it up for the book to make sure I knew which one it was. I said it to my guest and my guest said it back to me. I think I found my purpose. And my guest said, I think I found my purpose. And I kind of went, oh, I think I just said that. Oh, what's all that about? And then that begins another level of deep thought. What does that even mean? How did I do that? And I think in that interview was a lot of firsts. I think in that interview was also, I think stroke's the best thing that happened to me. And so what is that all about? Clearly you're got some problem with your head, Bill, because how can stroke be the best thing that happened to you? And then there goes another deep dive to unpack that and work it out. You know what I love about your journey is that I reckon there's a lot of this stuff to come for you still, a lot of these massive moments and ahas, and just when you're not expecting it, they'll just pop up.
We all have it. I love it. It's so exciting. What's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah.
But Bill, you repeated the story about episode 70 because in our interview, you were talking about how profound episode 70 was for you, and hearing yourself say something and then the guest saying it back to you. But we talk all the time, all day long. And for some reason, that day and that moment, you were able to hear yourself say it. And for some reason, he mirrored you on that.
Yeah. It was just it was another one of those coming together things. Everything just happened together, and yeah, it's pretty profound. I like to encourage my guests to listen back to the interview, sometimes as a third person listening in on themselves in a conversation with somebody else. You have another level of uh, understanding or clarity, or you hear yourself say something that you didn't remember that you said, and it just changes the game. Like it completely shifts things. Do you ever catch yourself saying or doing things that just astound you about yourself? Because I'm pretty proud of myself sometimes.
In the interview process?
Yeah.
It is so odd, Bill. It's so odd to go back through and edit and think, man, I always say this word, or I stumble over this, or I stutter. And you're right, there are those moments I love are the moments that I am stumped by the interviewee because I just love listening to them. And then I have to edit out all the pauses that I'm like, whoa. When I listen back to my interviews, I'm surprised at how often I pause. It makes me realize that I may not be the best interviewer because I just want to hear them talk.
Oh no, they're your perfect interviewer, because that's the whole point of it, isn't it? That's the whole point, is to hear the other person talk and to create space for them. And it's not about you, even though I make it about me a little bit in every episode, because to bring the conversation along, you have to share my experience and your experience and so on. But it's your space. It's about you. I've had, which is so bizarre, I've had stroke survivors come on the podcast. They've had a stroke 10, 13, 14, 15 years ago, never spoken to anybody about it ever. And then they come on the
Whoa.
podcast. And I'm like, what? How can that
Huh.
be?
How are those interviews different than the others?
I feel they're more cathartic for that person. I feel like they just are that first stumbling, that first step where they're stumbling over it or trying to get to it or whatever. I imagine that, not speaking about anything for 10 years, a particular issue, dramatic episode, whatever it is probably not that useful. I think it's more useful to talk about stuff, just from what I understand about trauma and keeping things bottled up. And I think everything needs to be dealt with some way, shape, or form. And I find it's a real honor and a privilege to be the first person that somebody's spoken to stroke about for 10 years. It just shouldn't be me. I'm grateful that it's happening and that it is me. And I think I got that with you because, like I said, I've spoken about it many times and I have been interviewed by different people for different podcasts, but not at the level and for the purpose that you did. And it was a new experience and it was a new understanding, and it was bringing things that were floating around in the periphery, bringing them all together and giving me one of those aha moments again. Like, it's that thing. You're also facilitating that space for me.
Wow.
And I listened to Michael Shutt's episode that just went out, and I've interviewed Michael as well. And just hearing your version and the stuff that you got out of him, so to speak, was really eye-opening. Again, it's really it is well worth the time and effort to extract that stuff. Not that the term extract is the right word, but to see it be born or emerge, those words, those thoughts, those feelings. I think it's a real good allocation of time and resources.
Oh, I'm so glad, Bill. Thank you. And it's interesting because you were just talking about speaking with people who are talking about their experience for the first time. And someone once asked, how do you choose your guests? And there's an initial meeting And we can all tell if someone's ready to share a story in order to inspire others, or if someone's there to process their own trauma. And I'm not a psychologist, and the process is for people who are ready, who are on another side of the dark. Of course, we all still have our dark moments
Yeah.
because when does recovery ever stop? But the people who end up sharing their story have processed a lot of that already. And I'm thankful to people like you and like Michael Shutt. I've worked with more than a few people who have written books or have done something with their stroke experience in order to give back to the stroke community. And my first question in the meeting is, are you here to share something that you've already done, or do you want to go through the process? And I haven't had one person say, let me share what I've already done. And I'm really thankful for the courage that people have in order to create, to explore, and to create.
Mm.
So thank you for saying that, Bill.
Mm.
Thank you for going through the experience with me too.
Yeah, you're welcome. It is an awesome experience. I just think about the people who I've interviewed as well, now that you said that, about people who are ready to share to help others and people who still early on. So my platform is, well, the only qualification is that you've had a stroke, you know someone who had a stroke, or you help people who had a stroke. There's no interview beforehand. People just say, can I be on your podcast? And they come.
There's value in that. There's value
Yeah.
in seeing every stage and every angle, and it's like showing up to a support group.
Yes.
Everyone has something to contribute.
Yeah. And I don't pick my guests, they pick me. So I don't say, oh, yeah, that person is going to be the right one or not. And I know you don't do that either, but your purpose is for that particular storytelling method that you choose is different, right? The point I'm trying to make is the ones that stand out the most are the ones that always, that often, more often than not, will say, I want to tell my story. I hope it helps someone. It's like, all right, yeah, come on. That's exactly
Yeah.
what I want. I want to help
Yeah.
other people. I'm so thankful that you want to help other people. I'll facilitate that for you. I'll help you do that. They haven't got a podcast. They never thought of starting a podcast. They haven't written a book yet. They're not interested in writing a book, whatever.
Yeah.
But they understand the power of sharing stories.
Yes.
And whatever I've heard about stories and how they were told in the ancient days, be it 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, or stories that come from further beyond that, they'll pass down person to person. That's how stories worked and became part of the health and well-being of a society. They were shared experiences, learnings. It was education. It was passing on wisdom before, perhaps in some parts of the world, before it was formalized the way that it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how everything comes back around, right? Now in business and in education, everyone's talking about storytelling. We need to bring storytelling into the classroom because if they can feel it, they learn it, right? And
Mm.
you're right. It's evolutionary. If we feel it in our bodies, it's visceral, that human connection when we're able to share. And it's profound for the person sharing and for the people listening. It's this communal levity that happens,
Yeah.
or depth that happens. I don't know if we're going up or down, but it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think we're going down, and then that helps people to go up, you know?
There we go.
Yeah. This might be a little bit different for you, but I ask everybody these three questions at the end of each episode. And because it's been a while and you don't remember a lot, maybe you won't be able to answer it specifically how others have, but that's all right. So the first question is, what is the hardest thing about stroke for you, or what was, or what has been?
The disorientation, wondering what it all means and what I can give now. I thought I knew what my, dare I say, purpose. I thought I knew my trajectory and was passionate about where I was going. And then everything halted. The feeling of disconnect also, disconnect from community. All of a sudden I'm different. Nobody can understand, which of course came back. All of that comes back, but there are those moments that feel confusing.
What is something that stroke has taught you?
The threads of life ultimately tie together. It has taught me that stillness can be a gift, that wisdom emerges through the process. It taught me that when we step away from the normalcy of life and we're forced to be still and reflect on ourselves and ourselves in relation to the world, we see life differently. So stroke offered me that opportunity and still does.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
It has been an awesome experience to work with you and do my story and share that with the world. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. I have loved connecting with you over the past 2 months, and now I love being in your space here. You create a space that feels very welcoming, and all of our conversations lead to philosophy and spirituality and purpose, and you're really an old soul that invites other people into being themselves and exploring that space within them. Thank you for listening to part 2 of Molly Buccola on recovery after stroke with Bill Gasiamis. For the full story, please listen to part 1.
Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and tax-deductible donations from friends and listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors with stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope at www.beyondstillness.org. Another way to support is to like, share, or subscribe to our weekly show. Again, thank you for devoting time and space for this week's episode of Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke.
Each colorful memory creates a parable for life's greater teachings, a compass for journeys ahead, and inspired wisdom for unique growth. We hope this conversation with Bill Gasiamis gave you a deeper understanding of my journey and the passion behind our organization. If this interview resonated with you, please like, share, or subscribe, and consider donating to Beyond Stillness Stories After Stroke. And remember, as part of the stroke community, you are more than supportive. You are inspirational.